Okay, so I am sitting here with Teresa Cain. We did our podcast episode in October. A little bit of time has passed since then. Teresa has left TreviPay and published a second book, so I just wanted to tack an update on to the beginning of the episode. Teresa, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Ryan. It's a great start to 2025, and I made some pretty big changes. My last day with TreviPay was in December, and I made a really big decision to focus a bit on being an author a second time around and speaking. So for those of you that have followed me around the world, I've done over 70 events the last couple years, and I decided that why not just do that full time? I think as a product practitioner, I love being in the day to day and managing product UX and design teams, and that's really what inspired this latest book that just got published. And it's actually a bestseller in industrial business management. It's called Next Gen Product Management, and I'm having a lot of fun. I think that right now my plan is to focus a bit on that and doing a bit of a book tour. I've also got a lot of speaking events lined up, but, as someone that's worked in, product for 20 years, I'll probably find myself back in a tech role. It's been kind of funny since announcing I was leaving, I think I've had more reach outs than when I was working there, so I definitely will have a lot of changes in 2025, and I'm most excited about seeing where our new book, Next Gen Product Management, is going and how that can help product managers, UX researchers, and designers.
Amazing. Well, Teresa, thank you for coming back on to do this quick update. And I am really excited now to dive into our initial episode.
Let's do it.
Welcome to That Pivotal Moment of Change, the podcast that's not about what you do, but how you got to where you are. Let's dive into the twists, the turns, and defining moments that shape our careers. In this episode of That Pivotal Moment of Change, we sit down with Teresa Cain, Director of Product Management, User Experience, and Design at TreviPay, and author of Solving Problems in 2 Hours. Teresa discusses her innovative 2-hour design sprint framework, the impact of AI on product and UX, and the importance of mentorship and fostering adaptability in teams. She also shares lessons on navigating leadership challenges and building trust in high-pressure environments. Packed with actionable insights, this episode is a must-listen for product and UX professionals.
Hey, Teresa, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Ryan. How are you?
I am great. Excited to talk to you today. Thank you for being part of the podcast. We are going to jump right into it here. So to kick this off, let's talk about what you are up to at TreviPay.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for those that don't know who TreviPay is, we are a global fintech. We process around 7 billion in transactions a year, and we have a pretty robust product and technology team with over 150 folks. We have around 30 product managers. We also have around a team of 10 for UX and design as well. And a lot of what we're working on is really where the market is taking us, which is digital transformation and e-commerce. So long gone are the days of in-store experiences. And, since the pandemic, digital transformation has really accelerated. And now automation and AI are really accelerating the experiences that we're creating in the cloud. So that's in the form of portals. It's in the form of automated payments. You probably use your phone and watch for payments every day. I know I do. So those are the experiences, those B2C like experiences that are expected in B2B is what we're working on.
And could you talk to me a little bit about your background and how you got into product work?
Absolutely. So I think I was on a podcast a couple weeks ago. I think I was termed a bicentennial because I've been in the space for around 20 years. But so I've been in product UX and design roles for the past 20 years, and it's actually kind of funny. I don't like to akin doing taxes to getting my start in product, but that's actually how I got my start in product management at H&R Block. And one of the first, I actually started off as an internship there way back in the mid 2000s. And They offered me a full-time role, and they said, "Hey, we want you to do your taxes in every single software available." And that was when TurboTax kind of was coming in and taking full charge of all their customers. And so that's really what got me started, not only in product management, but in really getting to understand users and listen to their feedback. And one of the big challenges I got to see firsthand right out of the gate with product management is what users want and don't want, which at the time they really wanted, clear visibility in how much things cost. So they didn't want to just find out the price at the end of doing their taxes. They wanted it up front and center, which is something that no matter what tax tool you do today, you're probably going to know how much you're going to spend before you go do it. So that's how I got my start. I've worked in a number of different companies, Fortune 500, 100 companies the past 20 years. And I've also coached around 300 organizations on a topic we'll talk about, I'm sure, a lot today on 2-hour design sprints outside of that as well.
Awesome. And by the way, I love bicentennial, like you said that. And ironically, you're the second person now that I've talked to who is in product and creative from a tax background.
Oh, funny. That's a good background to get started in. You learn exactly what people want and don't want. That's for sure.
Apparently so. So yeah, you mentioned the solving problems in 2 hours. Look, I'd like to talk about that just a little bit. For me, I think it is really interesting. And we talked about this a little bit before we began. Working at Yahoo for me, and this is, going way back, we used to do 3-day and 5-day design sprints. That was just part of the culture. And what I've learned over time and since then is it is increasingly difficult to actually do a 3 to 5 day design sprint. Even one full day is a hard thing to do now.
No, for sure. And I think, kind of what inspired it, it's crazy to think that, my research for that process started in 2019 and it's like nearly 5-6 years later at this point, and still going. But ultimately, before even the COVID-19 pandemic happened, I was already condensing the 5-day design sprint down to 3 days, 2 days, 1 day. And a lot of that is because, the organizations that I have worked for the last 10 years have really not had more than 1,000 employees. So other organizations I worked for, like H&R Block, DST Systems, which was later acquired, several other organizations, they were, 20,000 plus, 50,000 plus employees. And, you mentioned you worked for Yahoo. You have companies like Yahoo or Google where this kind of came out of with the team, Jake Knapp and the team at Google Ventures. And look at the budget there. This is a multi-billion-dollar budget where, they're able to spend money to, I don't want to say waste money, but they're able to spend money more freely. And so a lot of the foundations was really built for, big tech. And I think, we're a little older, right? So it used to be called FANG back in the day, and now it's like called MAME, because we're now Meta and got Alphabet instead of Google. So ultimately, these big companies, they have just a really large budget. So you have the time to go spend 5 days. And in fact, they encourage their teams to spend, 10 to 20 5-day design sprints a year, even today at Google. I have several friends, I have former colleagues that are at Google as well. And I think that's really fantastic. And I first want to say also, I'm still a big fan of a 5-day design sprint. I think they're really great for complex problems, but the challenge and why I created solving problems in 2 hours is not every organization has that time or the budget. In addition to that, we should be spending more frequent time on solving problems. We shouldn't be saying, hey, 6 months from now, I want to have a 5-day design sprint that I'm going to budget for to solve a problem by the end of the year that we can implement next year. I mean, it's a very waterfall approach that tried to adapt to agile by being shorter than design thinking, which could take, months to years. But a 2-hour process allows you to iterate quickly and make a decision before you commit to a prototype. And that's really the big differences in, I've had the opportunity to run over 100 design sprints, including 5-day, 3-day, all the way down to the 2-hour with organizations around the globe. And really the benefit is it's allowing you to make a cohesive decision together and move forward. You're not cutting out time, you're not cutting out ideation, but you're allowing that cohesiveness as a stakeholder group to move forward faster with that ideation.
I love it. I think it's great. I think it's really interesting and it's really good stuff. And one thing I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to write a book?
Yeah. So a lot of people might not guess this, but I was actually a double major in English and journalism. So I actually started off a writer. I was an Al Newmark scholar. I was like destined to go into the world of journalism. I wrote for several papers before I got into product management. And so I've always been a writer, first and foremost. I've been writing, since I was a kid. That was my destiny. When I went into the world of product management, user experience, and design really involves a lot of writing and ideation. So I feel like I've been able to use that during my career. But when I went back for my executive MBA, I really pressed to have my final project kind of prove something out. So my thesis was that I could turn solving problems into 2 hours into something. And not only did I prove it, but I also was able to create a best-selling book out of it. So really for me, putting that pressure on myself helped me fulfill a lifelong goal that I've had for a while. And it's not a one and done situation either. I've got another book on the way. So for me, it really got the foot to, hey, what am I passionate about? And you can still work on your passions in addition to being fulfilled in a career that you have, or in addition to, I'm also a mom of 3 kids, also a wife. You can have it all.
Congratulations. It's been really cool to follow the success of the book.
Thank you.
And you're right. It's just about getting out there and doing it. And you mentioned a second book. Do you want to quickly tease what that book is? Then we'll come into some of the reflective stuff.
Yeah, so this next book that's coming out, I'm actually pivoting a little bit from UX design focus, more so in product. So it's really about what's coming for product management. And I've actually partnered with 2 other authors on this book, Diana Stepner and Dr. Bart Jaworski. So we're really excited. We're getting ready to launch this book and have a big reveal here soon, anytime now. We're just waiting for those pesky editors to get done with their edits. And so this is something I'm super excited about because I think, solving problems in 2 hours is something I've been super focused on for the last 6 years. And I love a new challenge, and I love kind of getting feedback from the community on new ideas and concepts. So that'll be great to see.
Nice. Looking forward to it. So, okay, we're going to jump in here to some reflective questions and just talking about career and how you got to where you are. So what I wanted to start off with are, what are some of the key lessons you have learned throughout your career?
Sure. So I think, we've been talking a lot about, getting feedback from stakeholders and customers just in the last few minutes. And so, I think a really big key lesson is really creating relationships and getting feedback. I think that sometimes it's easy, especially in the realm of product management, where you have pressure. I've worked in product roles where I've had my CEO say, like, I need you to get this product out by this date. Like, do what you need to do. You need to release it by this date. And sometimes when you are being tied to a date or you're being tied to a client deadline, it's forcing you to make decisions that might not be the best decisions for the product. Whether that's from a feature standpoint, you're cutting features, or from a UX design standpoint. And so really being that advocate and pushing back and making sure that you're getting stakeholder involvement and feedback is really a big lesson, because I think no matter what, success or fail as a product manager or owner, or whatever role you're taking, general manager, whatever role you're in, that's going to be on you. You're going to be part of that success or failure. So make sure you're advocating for you, you're advocating for the team, and you're advocating for the product.
Love it. And what are some of the bigger challenges you faced in your career?
Yeah. So, I think it's interesting. I started my career, I didn't mention when I was at H&R Block, I started my career during the mortgage crisis. And so like the huge collapse, happened like right after I got out of college, and people were losing their jobs, which is so interesting, right? Because here we are today hearing, I see someone laid off on LinkedIn every other day now. So I would say, like, what I thought the challenge was, I'm going to give you 2 challenges, one of like 20 years ago, and then what's a challenge right now. So originally, one of the things that really worked against me first in my career is I kind of moved really fast up into management in my career. I was really young. I saw a lot of ageism. I saw a lot of, wow, like, you're really young and you're in this role, and therefore, like, you're going to have to work harder than everyone else. And so that's something that I've always like pushed through on and tried to build trust with colleagues and build trust over time with the community and with your stakeholders, whether that's with the customer and so forth. And so I always feel like I'm on that like cusp of, oh yeah, but you're like the youngest one here, or you're like the youngest at this age group of manager at a company, or youngest product manager. And like that's something I feel like I have dealt with my whole career. Um, so that's something that over time, you kind of overcome, and I'm sure I'm going to miss that. But today, if you look at women in product management today, and not to focus women, but product management today has up to upwards of 34% of women in product management. If you look at 20 years ago back when I started, that number was less than 10%. And so I think that's a big change, and that's exciting to kind of see that diversity there. And so I would say today, those were challenges I was dealing with 20 years ago. And today I'm seeing a completely different set of challenges. There are layoffs happening all over. I have people reaching out for jobs like, hey, do you have any openings? I'm sure you do as well, like every day, product UX and design, and the impact of AI. Everyone is saying, oh, AI can be used as a tool to enhance your job. But the reality is the layoffs are being caused by AI. And I just read an article from your former employer, Yahoo, saying that 134,000 jobs this year have been lost because of AI alone. And that was just something that came out this morning. So I think the impacts today are really, how do you keep your job? How do you stay ahead of the game? How do you future-proof your career, whether you're in product UX and design?
A lot of really interesting pieces that you just mentioned, and many of them relatable in a lot of different ways. I want to keep this moving forward. So thinking about pivotal moments in your career, can you share an instance or a setback where a failure turned into a hidden opportunity?
So I, several years ago, was a mobile product manager for a billion-dollar healthcare organization called NetSmart Technologies. And part of the role of like why I was hired there was, hey, we want to build this new primary care healthcare solution and put it into the market. And they've primarily focused on behavioral healthcare. And so that was a challenge, right? You have this company where their specialty is basically mental health, and they're wanting to go into physical health. And, I think even today, still, roughly 10 years later, not everyone wants to have their physical health and mental health profile in one when you go to the doctor. A lot of people like that separate. Some people don't like the fact that things are in the cloud. They don't want everything about them in every place that can be accessed, especially in the world of, we're not here talking about security today, but I mean, every other day there's some sort of incident, security incident. And so that was a really pivotal challenge is, how do we break through in this product? And one of the ways that I overcame it is I actually went on site. I actually went on site with over 100 physicians across both physical health and mental health locations. And I obviously got permission and had to sign a lot of stuff to sit in with patients. Patients approved everything. And I got to see how they were interacting with patients on both mental health, behavioral health, as well as physical health. And so how I overcame that is I became more knowledgeable, and I understood, what would it take for these customers, these were patients of physicians, but what would it take for customers to me, their patients, to say, like, I'm okay with these being combined and I would be okay with this product. And so that was something I was able, to overcome. And, this solution went out into the market. And that for me was like a super pivotal moment. I was not only able to overcome, but was really life-changing for me as a product practitioner because I learned so much.
So you may have answered the next question, but we will see. I was going to ask if you can recall a moment in your career that significantly influenced your path.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think I mentioned I've always been a goal setter. Like in college, I had 7 internships. Like I was just always like to kind of go above and beyond. And so for me, once I knew I wanted to go into product management at H&R Block, kind of the rest was history. And I put my eyes set on that. And so I actually worked for this document imaging company. It was called Perceptive Software. They were acquired by Lexmark and then acquired again by a company called Highland. And for me, that's actually where I became super passionate about it. There happened to be a female leader in product there, and she really kind of took me under her wing and inspired me to go further into product. And so for me to have a mentor, to have someone that said, hey, like, I think you're really great at this skill set, and continue to provide that feedback and grow me in my career, that for me was life changing, because they were providing me the direct feedback and gave me the skills I needed to really excel. So that was probably the pivotal moment for me.
Awesome. And what specific skills or mindsets have been crucial in navigating twists and turns in your own career?
So, today I feel like this word is a buzzword, so I'll explain it. But I really feel, before the days of Chat GPT, I am very strategic and like strategy and ideation. And today, that's what's so tough about seeing like AI come into the market. Like, I'm the person you go to if you say, hey, Teresa, I need you to create this like super awesome strategic deck with like the next 10 years of roadmap. Like, I'm your person for that. And now someone just goes into Chat GPT and they're like, hey, can you go create me these slides? So it's kind of upsetting to see AI come over there. But I think really thinking outside the box is really sums up that, right? I think that it's really easy to blend in and be like everyone else, or kind of run with the crowd. And I kind of like to run beside the crowd and come up with radical ideas, and kind of like solving problems in 2 hours. I think doing things in different ways, not just because that's how they're always done, is how I stand out and how I like to build my skill set. And I do that by experiencing everything. So I've actually done like over 10 certifications across product UX design. I even have my PMP, my project management professional certification. So I think for me, the best way is to experience all kinds of skill sets and understand what you excel in and what you don't excel in, and then kind of grow the areas that you do excel in.
Literally the definition of a growth mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. And that might be my personality profile right there. So growth mindset.
In hindsight, is there anything that you would do that you would have done differently in your career?
Yeah. I mean, I think I have had a ton of opportunities, over the years to go, live in other states and other countries. And I think I'm super happy and fulfilled with the path I have. I don't think I wouldn't change anything. I've really completed everything I've wanted to, but, at the end of the day, I'm mid-career, right? And I think for me, I have family in Italy, I've got family all over. And so I would have loved to just like take a huge risk and go over to Europe for a couple of years and just go see something different culturally over there. Because I think, I've worked with countries, I've traveled all over the world. I've worked with companies, like with jobs I've been at, but then also coached. And there's just something about experiencing those cultures. And I think it would be really cool to see for a few years how things are done differently in different countries. So that's something that, who knows, right? Who knows? My career's not over yet, but I'd love to be able to have changed that or do that sometime in my future.
So thinking about design and research, I know you're heavily involved in both. What do you think the future of design and research, or even product, for example, looks like?
Yeah, I feel really horrible for bringing up AI again. So, here's the reality. I really thought, I'm not saying like AI was around before ChatGPT, but ChatGPT, for whatever reason, really like sprung into action this like almost this FOMO for everyone, fear of missing out of, oh, I'm not using AI. So you go look at all these startups and all these accelerators that are all around AI. I mean, it's now like, I think a $1 billion funding going on for venture capital right now with all these AI startups. And as part of those startups, like look at some of the ones that are out there right now changing the game. So Mid-Journey, as an example, like I know several designers, not my designers because they're not allowed to use it, but I know several designers that are getting their designs from Mid-Journey or some of the AI capabilities out of Canva or even Dolly, and here's the thing, they might not be taking what they're given and using it, but they're taking it and they're modifying it, and even something as simple as like Adobe stock. Adobe used to have the ability to go sift through pictures that were created by actual physical people, and now it's flooded with like 95% AI. You have to like filter down. And so here's the impact of where I see with UX design and product management is you need to find a way to integrate that into what you're doing. So from a UX design standpoint, stay true to your design capabilities. Like, you are in that role for a reason. Like, don't use AI. Like, that is my opinion. Like, that is the enemy for those roles, in my opinion. From a product management standpoint, using it is actually a good thing, but it needs to be done to provide you time for other things. But at the end of the day, I think there is going to be a resource standpoint from like verifying your resources in AI. Not a lot of people are doing that. It's not always the correct information. And at the end of the day, those are learned models. They're supervised models. It's not unsupervised learning. So there's a lot going on there with AI. So I see that being an integral part of what's going on with product UX and design. But outside of AI, I think right now it's a really tough market. I think that a lot of people are trying to get into these roles. And if you're not already in it, it's very challenging.
That is for sure true. And in terms of AI, the way I always think about it, the way I have been thinking about it, is if you're a designer or even a researcher, I kind of see it as there are tools that you should learn how to use. In a sense, if you're a designer, you might be in Figma or Sketch, whatever it might be. I think AI is another tool that people should just be comfortable embracing, but I also think take it for what it is.
Right. Right. And I mean, and I even think, it's just so interesting. I think even from like a university standpoint, like there are several different degree programs now in product management, which is something that didn't exist 20 years ago either. And they're actually allowing adaptive AI. So like, as long as you create originally what you created and you can prove that, you can throw it in there to like refine what you have. And so when you see it now part of educational, and that's not across the board, like I don't know about, kids in high school or younger, but in college, that it's become adaptive. And so it does kind of make you wonder, you're having to grow and learn with it. And if you're not learning it, then you're probably behind the curve as well. So it's kind of that consideration of when do you use it, when do you not? I know that we've talked about Figma and FigJam before as well, in our past times, but Figma and FigJam, they have all these AI tools as well. And I actually just met with them this week because we have lots of licensing that we're on a renewal for. And they said, how do you like the AI features? And I told them straight up, I was like, honestly, I think they need some work, because at the end of the day, these models are still being refined of, how do you use AI in a tool like FigJam where you've run like a design sprint even, it's going to summarize everything for you. And sometimes it doesn't summarize it in the way that you could have summarized it or you'd like it summarized. So I think there's still time and growth for a lot of these tools.
Yeah, that's interesting. And just as you were saying, that just got me thinking about how AI could play a role or help thinking about a 2-hour design sprint or getting teams together for collaboration.
And actually, I have run several design sprints using ChatGPT with it. And a lot of times this is for, smaller organizations and you're not really putting anything proprietary in there, but where it really helps is like clarifying a problem, getting collaboration on a problem statement, things like that become really valuable.
Cool. And I think you touched on this a little bit previously, but just wanted to ask about who have been your most significant mentors or influencers and what are key lessons that you learned from them?
So I think I mentioned, I had a female mentor in the past, and I also had several male mentors as well. And those are mentors that really took me along for the ride and let me experience things. One in particular, I started my career at a time when waterfall was still around and the big transition to agile. So I actually got to help move a company all the way from waterfall to agile, and that was a foundational experience for me. And again, I couldn't have done that, without a mentor. Ultimately making sure and understanding, I was able to experience really every role, even when I was in product, but also being able to understand like, okay, we're not going to release a product after 1 year. We're going to do it incrementally. But I also have to give a shout out. I mentioned I'm Italian. My mom, like I come from like a women led, workhorse family. And my mom is amazing workaholic. And so a lot of, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a positive way. Like getting everything done, like raising a family, having a career. I probably wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't have the foundation of not only a mom who does that, but she like does everything still even today. At a drop of a hat, like she is the go-to person, like if we need something. And so that's probably the number one inspiration, before I got into my career, of who's always been pushing me to do more. So.
And when you think about in your career and in previous roles, and you think about mentors, and I think mentorship is incredibly important. Did you realize in the moment when you had somebody who was a mentor, or was it a situation where it was down the road after the fact and you realize, wow, like that person I worked with or that person I worked for, I didn't even realize it at the time, but they really were a mentor to me?
I think it's more after the fact. I think, when you're in the moment and you have someone, sometimes it's tough love, right? Sometimes the mentorship you're getting is not what you're wanting. Sometimes it's really tough, direct feedback that's like, hey, if this is your career, like you need to be doing this. And, what I think is so interesting is I've worked at 6 or 7 tech companies in my career, and every single company I've worked for has tried to mold me a different way to their culture. And so that's just the reality of that culture being created at every organization. And so I think some of that mentorship, gives you that ability working at different places to say, you're really creating a flexible way to adapt your skill set at different companies, and that makes you stronger. And so therefore, I think it's harder to appreciate that mentorship in the moment. But I will say, in my latter career, I mentioned I completed my executive MBA. So I also had an executive coach, during that MBA. Her name is Kelly. And basically, like, she really pushed me as well. She's just like, keep going. What are you doing? Get this book published. Like, she really pushed me to say, like, hey, this has been a goal of yours. Just get it done. Like, what are you doing? Get it done. She also told me, to stop doing things for free. So, and that was really inspirational. And, I think that sometimes when you're trying to figure out, what you have and where you're going with it, you need that tough feedback, and you need to hear it from someone that's outside of your situation to know, like, where you should be going.
What's made me think about it is there's ADP List, which is a platform to find mentors. A lot of companies have mentorship programs. I feel like today, and I didn't have this when I started out, but there's ways where you can actively seek out mentors. And I guess what I've learned over time is there are people that I've worked with or been around in the past who actually have been mentors. And it took me years to realize that that person was a mentor, which really just makes me think about the importance of listening to other perspectives and hearing what people have to say, and learning, being open to learning from others, because it's going to come back and help you at times when you don't expect it.
And I think now, we're getting older, right? So we're now becoming the mentors, and mentoring people as well, and trying to provide the same or different guidance that, we've gotten. I definitely have done that as well the past several years. And I'm also a Girl Scout leader, so I'm also trying to, mentor that younger generation to, inspire them too. So I think it's a pass it on approach, right?
Sure is. And what are some of the most important takeaways from your career journey that you would like to share?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is being versatile and open. So I think there have been times in my product career where I was given products that I didn't want. I was like, I don't want this product. I don't want this problem, I guess I should say. Because sometimes when you're given something, it's not, you're giving, it's almost like the joke of saying, when you take on someone else's code as an engineer, it's a mess when you get in there. It's the same as a product manager. Every product manager has a different style of doing things. And so when you take on someone else's mess of a product that's been around for a while, that's really challenging. But you kind of need to be versatile, you need to be open, push through it, and kind of make it your own and make those changes on your own.
The next question it's going to be a two-part question, and you might have the same answer. But what advice would you give to someone earlier in their career who is still trying to figure things out? And what advice would you give to somebody who is in a more senior role or a more senior leader?
Yeah. So earlier career, I think, it's drink from the water fountain. I think, early career, that's a time that you're a sponge. You need to be listening, not telling people. And I think that's really hard, especially, I'll consider myself someone that talks a lot, thanks to my time background. So I think it's hard, right? It's really hard to actively listen and understand. And so I think the earlier part of your career, that's what you should be focusing on. Focus on learning. Don't focus on being the person that's right in the room. Focus on listening actively and kind of creating those relationships. And then later on, in mid and even later career, you now have done the active listening and you're engaging and you're collaborating. And I think those earlier years of listening allow you to foster trust with other employees, other stakeholders, and be able to use that to kind of build from there. Because I think as a leader, I know you're in a leadership role as well. I think things definitely change from when you're, lower down in the food chain to when you're a leader. There's different things you're learning. There's different expectations of how you're managing the team, and you have a more results-driven mindset, and you're encouraging your team. You are, in fact, with my team today, I know everyone can't see this book I'm holding up, but, we're reading the Marty Kagan series and just kind of bringing refresh, back to the product management team, and some of the UX and design team is there. So this is a time where you are not just listening, you should always be listening, but you're collaborating, you're leading, you're inspiring. You need to inspire the team below you if you want the results. And I think that's the one thing that's tough as a leader is the way and the results that your team has is reflective of you. So if someone on your team isn't performing, you're not performing. And that's really hard as a leader, right? You learn that over time.
Absolutely. That and delivering the more difficult conversations when somebody might not be performing or needs to hear something, which is just a difficult conversation, which I think is something that you just kind of learn to do over time. And if you're doing it for the right reason, it often makes it a lot easier.
Right.
Okay. So just moving on here to some closing pieces. So what is your favorite quote?
Oh man, that's a tough one. So before Nike existed, my Nona actually created the term "just do it," and I swear by that. So, but no, I mean, and I love this quote. So I'm not quoting Nike here. I'm quoting my Nona, even though it's the same. But my Nona used to tell me like, "Just do it, like just go for it." And so she obviously, English was not her first language. Italian was, so like that was the phrasing. But ultimately, that was like encouragement. Like I talked about the history, family history. But that honestly is my favorite quote, and I've kind of kept that to heart. Like I've just gone and done everything, and that's what she didn't tell me is when to stop. So I've overcommitted, my entire career. But yeah, that's my favorite quote.
Perfect. It's a good one. And hopefully you can get some royalties for that. There is a lot of great content out there. What are you looking at now, and what would you recommend to others?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I recommend right now, I don't know about your guys' organization, but the COVID-19 pandemic kind of created a shift in our organization a little bit. So we actually still have like over like 80% of our product and tech organization is remote most of the time. And we have something called the core week where everyone comes in once a month and we get together. And then other roles like leadership roles obviously go in more often. But I think there has been a shift a little bit in best practices of what was going on before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and now, and kind of marrying those worlds. And so I mentioned, we're reading the Marty Kagan series, which is like inspired, empowered, transformed. And I think I encourage every organization, whether product, UX, and design, to really look at their values and goals and best practices and say, like, are we doing the best we can? And the reason I think it's so important is I talked a little bit about the tech layoffs that are going on. Now is not the time to be slacking, to be doing the least amount or the bare minimum. Like, I think now is the time to be the best performer you can be in your role as a product, UX, and designer, because you don't know how tomorrow looks for your organization, for other organizations, and just the sheer amount of tech layoffs that continue to happen all over that I'm seeing in my LinkedIn feed. I've been fortunate to work for an organization that hasn't done any at all. And I think that's so rare. Like that is a rare thing to be able to say that out loud. It's like, it feels like less than 1%. Like, don't quote me on that, but like that feels like a really rare thing to say, oh, we haven't had to do those. Like, that's not something I hear often. And, but for me, it's refreshing those best practices on how do we grow as a product, UX, or design organization together to be the best in class, and to stay in the market, stay competitive in the market.
Yeah, I love the way you're thinking about that. And it's really cool that you have your team reading books that are going to challenge them and make them better at what they do. And I'm assuming you have group discussions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not, yeah, it's like a weekly discussion, lots of action items, but yeah, everyone, some of them probably aren't reading. They're probably using Audible, but that's okay.
It's okay. It's still the discussion. It's still the discussion matters. I'm sure they get a lot out of it.
I was just gonna tell you, okay, so one of the things that's what I mentioned. So like for instance, in the Empowered book, Marty Kagan says something in there like every product manager should spend 4 hours a day on innovation and ideation. And I would really love to get a poll, Ryan, of any product manager listening and say, like, how many of you are spending 4 hours a day and have time for 4 hours a day on innovation? Like, because we did a survey with our team and like some are, but not most aren't. And so those are the types of things where it's like, what works best for your organization on how much time you're spending in different areas, because that really makes the difference of like what your company goal is. Like, what is the goal of having your product UX and design team? So that's why I think it's so critical.
My guess is very few people are focused on innovation, and that's across the board. I know it's something I think about all the time is how can we carve out time for innovation, or as silly as this seems, even thinking about what does innovation mean to you, which is a conversation we have had on my team, and everyone had somewhat a different answer. And I kind of look at that as like, first, let's identify what we think innovation means, and then start talking about how we might be able to do more innovative things and make it part of our job. And it's a really, really hard thing to do. And lastly, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm really active on LinkedIn. So if you just, look for Teresa Cain on LinkedIn. I also, if you are super interested in solving problems in 2 hours, I've got a website, 2hourdesignsprints.com. And I'm sure you'll probably see on LinkedIn or Twitter here soon, this new book that I'm intentionally not telling you the name of. You're going to have to just watch my feed to find out about it.
Awesome. Well, this was super interesting. And thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed our content today, please like, subscribe, and comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time.